The F-4 Phantom began its career as a fleet defense interceptor for the US Navy, before evolving into the defining multi-role combat jet of the Vietnam era. Ground attack, air superiority, electronic warfare, the Air Force, Navy, and Marines all flew it. More than 5,195 airframes rolled off production lines for over a dozen nations. The F-5 was conceived as a lean, affordable option for American allies who needed a capable jet without the complexity or cost of frontline US fighters. Easy to maintain and economical to operate, it saw action across numerous conflicts throughout the Cold War. Production reached over 2,600 units, spanning multiple variants. The F-111 was an attempt to serve two services with one aircraft. Its variable geometry wing was genuinely ahead of its time, though the naval version collapsed under repeated development failures. The Air Force variants found their footing as a capable long-range strike platform. The A-7 Corsair II was developed to succeed the A-4 Skyhawk in the naval strike role. Subsonic but remarkably accurate, it flew combat missions across Vietnam, Lebanon, Libya, and the Gulf War before the Navy withdrew it in 1993. The Air Force flew it in significant numbers, and Greece kept it operational until 2014. The A-6 Intruder served as the US Navy's all-weather precision strike aircraft for nearly 30 years. Built for low-level attack in any visibility, day or night, it flew in every major American conflict, from Vietnam through Desert Storm. A total of 693 were produced before the last airframes were withdrawn in 1997. The Harrier was the first fixed-wing aircraft capable of vertical and short takeoff and landing to enter frontline service anywhere in the world. Powered by a single vectored thrust engine, it gave the Royal Air Force a combat jet that needed no conventional runway. Across all marks, 278 were produced. The Buccaneer was a British strike aircraft designed from the ground up to penetrate enemy radar coverage by flying fast and low beneath detection. Originally embarked with the Royal Navy, it later moved to the Royal Air Force and also served with South Africa. It remained in frontline use until 1994, including combat operations during the Gulf War. The Sea Harrier was a carrier-based VTOL fighter developed specifically for Royal Navy service. It differed from the original Harrier with a redesigned elevated cockpit, Blue Fox radar, and genuine air-to-air combat capability. In the 1982 Falklands conflict, Sea Harriers claimed 23 confirmed aerial kills. The Jaguar was a collaborative British-French supersonic strike aircraft conceived in the 1960s to replace trainers and light attackers in both air forces. Designed around low-level penetration, it served through the Cold War and flew combat missions from the Gulf War to Kosovo. India operated it until 2014. The MiG-21 holds the record as the most produced supersonic jet fighter in history, with over 11,000 built across dozens of variants. Fast and lightweight, it formed the backbone of Soviet-aligned air forces around the world and has seen combat in nearly every major conflict since Vietnam, including present-day operations. The MiG-23 was the Soviet Union's response to the F-4 Phantom, incorporating a variable sweep wing and beyond visual range missile capability. During the 1970s, it displaced the MiG-21 as the primary Soviet frontline fighter and was widely distributed to Allied nations. Its record in actual air combat proved unimpressive. The MiG-25 was engineered for a single mission, intercepting fast, high-altitude targets. It holds the record as the fastest operational jet fighter ever produced, capable of exceeding Mach 3. Constructed primarily from steel rather than titanium, it sacrificed turning performance entirely in exchange for raw speed. The MiG-27 was a dedicated ground attack derivative of the MiG-23, purpose-built for low-level strike rather than air-to-air combat. It featured a simplified intake, a sloped nose for improved forward visibility, and increased weapons payload. Both the Soviet Union and India flew it, with India retiring its examples in 2019. The Su-15 was a Soviet twin-engine interceptor designed to engage Western bombers at high altitude. It was never exported and operated exclusively within Soviet air defense forces. The type became internationally known in 1983 after one intercepted and destroyed Korean Airlines Flight 007 over Soviet territory. The Su-17 was the first variable sweep wing aircraft anywhere in the world to reach operational service, developed from the fixed-wing Su-7. The swing wing configuration substantially improved range and payload flexibility, and the type served widely with Soviet forces as well as Warsaw Pact and Middle Eastern air arms. The Su-24 was the Soviet equivalent of the F-111, a variable geometry supersonic strike aircraft built for low-level penetration deep into enemy-held territory. It was the first Soviet aircraft to incorporate a genuine terrain-following system and remained Russia's primary strike platform for several decades. The Yak-28 was a swept-wing, twin-engine Soviet aircraft that served simultaneously as a tactical bomber, interceptor, and electronic warfare platform. Different variants fulfilled completely distinct operational roles within the Soviet Air Force. Approximately 1,180 were produced before the line closed in 1967. The Mirage III was France's first Mark II-capable fighter and one of the most commercially successful Western exports of the Cold War era. Its delta-wing configuration influenced aircraft design for a generation. The type saw intensive combat use in the Middle East, most prominently with the Israeli Air Force during the Six-Day War of 1967. The Mirage V was a simplified, clear-weather ground attack derivative of the Mirage III, originally developed at Israel's request, but embargoed before delivery could take place. France subsequently marketed the type broadly, and it flew combat missions with multiple air forces across Africa and the Middle East for decades. The Mirage F1 moved away from the delta wing configuration of its predecessors in favor of a conventional swept wing, which improved low-speed handling and extended range. It served as France's primary interceptor through the 1970s and 1980s and was widely exported. Iraq made extensive use of it throughout the Iran-Iraq War. The Super Etendard was a carrier-based strike fighter developed for the French Navy. It drew global attention in 1982 when Argentine naval aviators used it to deliver Exocet anti-ship missiles against British warships during the Falklands War. France continued operating the type until 2016. The Viggen was Sweden's wholly domestic effort to produce a world-class multi-role combat aircraft. Its double delta canard configuration allowed short takeoffs and landings from dispersed road bases, a deliberate feature of Swedish Cold War defense strategy. A total of 329 were built across 5 distinct variants. The Kafir combined a Mirage 5 airframe with an American General Electric J-79 engine and Israeli avionics, producing a domestically supportable fighter at a time when reliable foreign supply could not be guaranteed. It gave Israel credible air combat capability without depending on external partners. 212 were built. The Cheetah was South Africa's heavily upgraded derivative of the Mirage III, developed domestically while the country operated under an international arms embargo. Structural rebuilding and avionics modernization were carried out locally, with some reported Israeli involvement. The type retired from service in 2008. The Mitsubishi F1 was Japan's first domestically designed supersonic combat aircraft, developed under constitutional constraints that confined it to a defensive role. Optimized for anti-ship strike, it served the Japan Air Self-Defense Force from 1978 until 2006. 77 were produced in total. The J-7 was China's locally manufactured and progressively improved version of the MiG-21. Chinese engineers took the baseline design considerably further than the Soviets had, producing dozens of variants across 5 decades. The final J-7S were delivered in 2013 for Bangladesh, one of the longest jet fighter production runs in history. The J-8 began as a Chinese effort to build a larger, longer-range interceptor by scaling up the MiG-21 concept. Development was severely disrupted by the Cultural Revolution, and the aircraft did not enter service until 1980. The J-82 is a substantially redesigned aircraft with side-mounted intakes and a modern radar influenced by Western designs. The Sayakher is an Iranian domestically developed fighter built on the F-5 Tiger II airframe, featuring a twin-tail configuration visually inspired by the F/A-18. Developed under international sanctions with constrained outside support, it entered Iranian Air Force service in 2007. Production volumes have remained limited. The J-22 Oral was a joint Yugoslav-Romanian subsonic strike aircraft developed in the 1970s to give both nations a domestically produced combat jet. It entered Yugoslav service in 1978 and flew active combat missions during the Yugoslav wars of the 1990s. A total of 165 were produced across several variants. The IAR-93 was Romania's version of the joint Oral program. Built locally by Aviation Craiova, it entered Romanian service in 1979 and served as the country's primary ground attack aircraft throughout the Cold War. Unlike its Yugoslav counterpart, it was never committed to active combat operations. The Q-5 was China's first domestically conceived ground attack aircraft, derived from the MiG-19, but featuring a redesigned fuselage and side-mounted air intakes. It entered service in 1970, and over 1,300 were produced. The type was exported to Pakistan, North Korea, Bangladesh, and Myanmar across multiple variants. The F-104S was an Italian-developed upgrade of the Lockheed Starfighter, modified by Air Italia to carry the AIM-7 Sparrow radar-guided missile, and thus gain a genuine beyond visual range air combat capability. It was the most capable starfighter variant ever produced, and served as Italy's primary interceptor until 2004.